Hello there, I'm Thomas from She Died in a Parking Lot. In this video, I want to talk to you about the basic of an audio compressor, what it does and how it works. Compression was one of the audio effects that took me the longest to understand, as it has a lot of parameters to take into account as well as your audio source. In audio, a compressor does exactly what the name implies. It compresses the dynamic range of your audio signal. That way, the quieter and the louder part of an instrument, for example, will be closer to each other. That will also modify the perceived loudness of your audio signal, and that's one of the main reasons to use a compressor. So, let's get into it. Okay, so new project in Logic, just one track, and I loaded on it one simple drum loop, which is from one of Logic sample pack. It's the 80s pop beat 18, and it sounds like that. Really simple drum beat, and that's what I will need to show you what I want to show you with the compressor. So let's load that compressor on the track. You can go to Effects right there, Dynamics, and select your compressor, or simply click on the bar right there, and it will load the compressor. Here in the middle, you will find your meter that will display your gain reduction in decibel. I will refer to it as dB as it's shorter. I think you will always find some kind of gain reduction meter on any compressor. And also here in Logic, you can switch your meter to a graph view that will display your compressor settings and your sound intensity instead of the needle meter. Then, right below your meter, you will have the 6 more important parameters of a compressor that you will find in almost all compressors. So let's start with the 2 most important ones, the threshold and the ratio. First of all, the threshold knob, it's where you're gonna set the level where the compressor starts to activate. If the signal is quieter than the threshold you set, it will do nothing. And if your signal is louder and goes over that threshold, well, the compressor will start to compress. Your x-axis is the level of compression that will occur in the output, while your y-axis is gonna be your input signal. First of all, let me put that knob down. I will get back to that one later. So for example, if my signal input at minus 10 decibels, it will now output at minus 15 or 16 decibels. Also good to note that my auto gain is turned to off. I'm going to put my threshold to 0 and then decrease the knob as my loop plays so you can see what it does. So that's a lot of compression right there, but as you can see here, everything that goes below minus 50 decibels, which is a really low threshold, is going to be compressed. Okay, let's keep it to minus 24 now. Then you have your ratio knob. The ratio will affect how much compression is applied to your signal. The higher the number, the higher the compression. Let me explain how the numbers right there works. So for a ratio of x to 1, you will have 1 decibel of reduction for every x number that goes above your threshold. If you have a 4:1 ratio, every 4 decibel above your threshold will output as 1 after compression. So if you have a minus 20 decibel threshold and give it a minus 16 decibel signal, those 4 decibels will be output as 1. And now you will have an output of minus 19 decibels. And if you have a signal of minus 12 dBs that goes over that same threshold, those 8 more decibels will output as 2, and you will have an output of minus 18 decibels. So as you can see on the graph right there, the more I turn my ratio up, the more everything above my threshold of minus 20 gets compressed. Let's start to a ratio of 1:1, so no compression, and increase that to see how our drum loops sound. Let's turn that ratio down to something around 6:1. Let's just push those knobs a bit more so we can hear better what the next parameters do. To show you what we did on our audio right there, I'm just going to bounce in place the compressed track. As we can see, our signal is definitely more quiet. We still have a bit of transience, but not so much. Now that our signal is more quiet and more compressed, we can use the makeup gain to compensate for the gain reduction and make our signal louder again. So this is before the compression and with the compression. You can see here it's around minus 10 dB of compression. We can check that on the meter as well. So let me turn the makeup knob up to see if we can compensate for that gain reduction. Okay, as we can see here with those settings, we can't quite compensate as we want without clipping on the output. So you have to be aware of that when you set your compressor, but for the sake of the demonstration, let's just keep that to plus 4 dB. And let's do some on and off with the compressor to hear what it does. That's an important part of using a compressor, is setting your input and your output signal to have the same perceived level so you can hear what the compression does and not just the volume change. So without compression and with our compression settings. Also, there's some auto gain settings if you want to let Logic analyze your signal and set it to 0 dB or minus 12 dB by itself. There are some more settings on the sidechain tab right there to control that auto gain with the detection knobs, but that's a Logic specific subject. So let's keep that for everyone. And you can hear the compressor pumping on the room reverb on the drums. Listen to that. You can hear the reverb going like after each beat. The settings right there are a bit extreme, but I think we can really hear what the compressor does, and that's what is important to me in that video. So let's keep it going. Now this is where the fun begins. Then you have your knee settings, and that will affect how your signal is compressed around your threshold. Here at 0, it's called the hard knee. It's right there. You have no compression before the signal hits your threshold. That means, like our example right there, you can have more audible compression depending on your audio source and your compression settings. And usually you can control that knee with a knob, or sometimes it's just a button, to make it go to a soft knob settings. So if I turn the button up, you can see the knee right there, it's going to be softer. That way, the compression will start slowly before your threshold, and the transition between your uncompressed and compressed signal will be a bit more subtle. So let's hear how our knee settings will affect our drum loop right there. Let's start to 0 and increase to a softer knee. And we can definitely hear how it changes the compression, and at a more extreme compression settings like we have here, it's really a bit more natural. Not completely, of course, but a bit more than the hard knee settings. Finally, we can take a look to our AR envelope or attack release. They are both measured in milliseconds. First, the attack. It will define how quickly the compressor will engage once your signal reach the threshold. It's the amount of time between zero compression and the full compression you set with your threshold and ratio. You'll have to be careful with your attack settings because you don't want to lose too much transient information of your audio signal because that's an important part of the tone of an instrument. To demonstrate that, let's go back to a hard knee so we can really hear what the compression does. First, I'm going to decrease our attack time toward 0 so you can hear the transient of the drums completely disappear, and then increase it so you can hear how the punch starts to appear again. Then on the opposite part of your envelope, you have your release, and it will define the amount of time between full compression and zero compression when your audio signal goes under your threshold again. A slower release implies softening the dynamic of your signal, and a faster release can be used to accentuate that dynamic. And as in a lot of compressors, you can find an auto-release knob. It will analyze your signal so it reacts a bit more dynamically to it while keeping your release time around the value you set manually. So let's play with the release time and see how it affects our drum. I think you can understand now why there are a lot of ways you can use a compressor to shape your tone. As example, in drums, a shorter attack will attenuate the transients, while a longer one will accentuate the dynamic and the punch of your drums. And a shorter release time will increase your punchiness, and a longer one will make the drums more even. I hope you enjoyed this video, and that what's a compressor is a bit more clearer to you, or that you learn a thing or two. As always, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel so you can see more videos like that. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time.